The burnt cheese smell had worked its way into my hair by the time I gave up scrubbing the lasagna pan. 2 in the morning, and I was still standing at the sink in my childhood kitchen, watching brown water circle the drain. Dad's 70th birthday dinner, the first since Mom died, and I'd managed to carbonize the top layer while leaving the middle somehow cold. A real talent, that. From the living room, I could still hear Jenna's laugh, that particular pitch she uses when she's had exactly 2 glasses of wine and wants everyone to know she finds something amusing. Marcus had left an hour ago with his wife, but not before checking his watch 3 times during dessert. The store-bought tiramisu I'd picked up after I realized the lasagna was unsalvageable. Dad had eaten it without comment, the same way he'd pushed aside his dinner plate earlier. Just a quiet scrape of ceramic against wood, then his hands folded in his lap. Useless. Jenna had said it right in the middle of dinner, loud enough that everyone stopped chewing. Honestly, Maya, you're useless in the kitchen. Good thing you've got other skills. She'd smiled when she said it, that smile that's supposed to soften the blade. Marcus had laughed into his wine glass, not a full laugh, just enough to show he agreed. I set the pan on the drying rack and dried my hands on the dish towel Mom embroidered 20 years ago. Little yellow flowers along the edge, some of them fading now. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator's hum and whatever late-night show Jenna was watching. She'd claimed the guest room upstairs, said she'd had too much wine to drive home. Never mind that she lived 15 minutes away. My room was at the end of the hall, the same room I'd had growing up. Same wallpaper with the tiny roses, same window that stuck halfway when you tried to open it. I'd moved back 6 months ago, right after we buried Mom. Someone needed to keep the house running, and Jenna had her condo in the city. Marcus had his family in the suburbs. That left me. The logical choice. The available one. I pulled open my desk drawer and took out the manila folder I'd been keeping since January. Payment receipts, all of them. Property tax, $3,000, paid in March when the county sent the final notice. Furnace replacement, $4,200, emergency service in the middle of that cold snap in December. Dad's pneumonia, the hospital bills insurance didn't cover. Another $6,000 spread across 4 months of payment plans. Utility bills, every single one since I moved in. The plumber who fixed the basement leak. The roofer who patched the shingles after that storm. My savings account had looked healthy when I came back. Past tense. I sat on the edge of my bed and spread the receipts across the comforter. All these numbers, all this keeping things together, and not once had anyone asked how I was managing it. Jenna thought I worked from home because it was cozy. Marcus assumed Dad was covering his own expenses. Dad himself never asked about money, just thanked me absently when I set his meals down or handed him his medications. The banister in the hallway, I'd spent 3 weekends stripping and restaining that wood after I noticed it was starting to splinter. The garden out front, the one Mom had loved. I weeded it every Sunday morning, planted new perennials in the spring. The photos in the living room, the ones that had started to fade, I'd paid to have them digitally restored and reprinted, bought new frames that matched the old ones so Dad wouldn't notice the change. Jenna's voice drifted up the stairs. She was on the phone now, probably with her boyfriend. I don't know why she even tries to cook, she was saying. She's never been good at anything domestic. Mom used to joke about it. I closed my eyes. Mom used to joke about a lot of things, usually when she was tired, usually when she was trying to deflect from something harder. But Jenna remembered the jokes and forgot the context. Easy to do when you only visited on holidays. The deed paperwork was in my nightstand, in a folder separate from the bills. I'd found it last month when I was going through Mom's desk, looking for her insurance information. Thick legal paper, official county seal, dated 3 years ago. Right after Mom's cancer diagnosis came back, right before she started the treatment that didn't work. Maya Reyes listed as co-owner right there in black ink. 50%. Mom's signature, notarized and witnessed. She'd never told me. Never mentioned it during all those hospital visits, all those long afternoons sitting in the chemo suite. I'd found a note with the paperwork, though. Mom's handwriting, shaky from the medication. Talk to Bill Chen, her attorney, about the house. Make sure M knows. She died before that conversation happened, and Dad either didn't know or had forgotten. When we went through the will, the lawyer had read through everything so quickly. Bequests, distributions, the standard legal language. I don't think anyone actually listened. Jenna had been crying, Marcus had been checking his phone, and I'd been trying to hold Dad upright in his chair. I put the deed back in the nightstand and turned off the light. Through the wall, I could hear Jenna's TV, some laugh track playing on loop. Tomorrow she'd sleep until 10, then head back to her life. Marcus would text to ask how Dad was doing, and I'd be here, like always, holding everything together with duct tape and direct deposits. Sure, what could go wrong? Morning came with the smell of coffee I'd set to auto-brew at 6. I was already dressed and at the kitchen table with my laptop when Dad shuffled in, wearing his robe and the slippers I'd bought him in March. He poured himself a cup, added the 2 sugars I kept in the small bowl by the pot, and sat down across from me with the newspaper I'd retrieved from the driveway. "Thanks for this," he said, meaning the coffee. Or maybe the newspaper. Or maybe everything in general. He never specified. Sure. We sat in silence. He read the obituaries first, always the obituaries, then moved to the local news. I answered emails from clients, adjusted timelines on projects. I worked in marketing consulting, which sounds impressive until you realize it mostly means making PowerPoint decks look professional and explaining to small business owners why their logo shouldn't have 7 different fonts. I'd given up my apartment downtown to move back here. The rent I'd been paying was about the same as the property tax bill, and at least this way I could keep an eye on Dad. That's what I'd told myself anyway. Jenna appeared around 9, already dressed in clean clothes I didn't remember seeing her bring. She must have had an overnight bag in her car. She poured coffee into Mom's favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that I'd been carefully using for 6 months, and leaned against the counter. "Sleep well?" she asked me. "Fine." "Good. Listen, I felt bad about last night, the useless comment." She waved her hand, dismissing it. "I was just teasing. You know how I get." I knew how she got. I also knew she wouldn't have said it sober, but she'd been thinking it regardless. "It's fine," I said. "You should probably stick to simpler recipes, though. Lasagna's tricky." Dad turned a page of his newspaper, didn't look up, didn't comment. Jenna checked her phone, then started talking about some project at her design firm, something about a difficult client who kept changing their mind about color schemes. I made appropriate listening sounds and returned to my laptop. She left around 10, kissed Dad on the cheek, waved at me. "See you next month," she called from the doorway. Thanksgiving was 4 weeks away. I wondered if she'd offer to host. Probably not. By 11, I was at the co-working space downtown, the one I joined because working from the house all day made me feel like I was dissolving into the wallpaper. $20 a day for a desk and decent internet and the presence of other humans. I'd calculated it once. If I worked from home full-time, I'd save about $400 a month. But I'd also lose my mind, so there was that. My friend Keiko found me at lunch, waving a container of leftover curry. We'd known each other since college, back when I had my own apartment and my own life. She worked freelance too, graphic design, and we'd fallen into a routine of eating together on Thursdays. "How was the birthday dinner?" she asked, settling into the chair across from me. "I burned it." "The whole thing?" "Just the top. And somehow undercooked the middle. I'm a culinary marvel." She grinned, then caught something in my expression. "What happened?" I told her about Jenna's comment, about the whole evening, really. Keiko listened the way she always did, without interrupting, without offering solutions too quickly. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Why, don't you ever push back?" she asked. "They're family." "So?" I unwrapped my sandwich, turkey and avocado from the place downstairs. "So, you don't push back against family, you just deal with it. That's not actually a law of physics, you know." Keiko stabbed a piece of chicken with her fork. I used to think the same thing. My mom would make these comments about my weight, my career choices, my apartment. Little cuts every time I saw her. And I'd just take it because she was my mom and that's what you do. What changed? I got tired. She said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I got tired of feeling small every time I talked to her. So I started setting boundaries. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't cut her off or anything. I just stopped accepting the premise that I owed her infinite patience. How'd she react? Badly at first, then she adjusted. People can surprise you if you give them the chance. Keiko leaned back in her chair. You can love people and still let them see what they take for granted. I thought about that on the drive home. Let them see what they take for granted. Easy to say, harder to execute when you've spent 6 months becoming invisible, when your entire role is to keep things running so smoothly that no one notices the machinery. The house was empty when I got back. Dad had left a note on the kitchen counter, gone to Jerry's for cards. Back by 5. His handwriting had gotten shaky in the last year, but he still insisted on writing things down instead of texting. I had 2 hours before I needed to start thinking about dinner. I made myself tea and sat at the kitchen table, looking around at the room I deep cleaned so many times I could map the stains on the ceiling. Then I heard voices in the hallway, Jenna's voice and Marcus's. I walked out to find them standing in the living room, both of them looking at something on Marcus's phone. They glanced up when I appeared, and Jenna had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Hey," she said. "We came to talk to Dad." "He's out." "Oh." She exchanged a look with Marcus. "Well, maybe you can help. We've been talking, and we think it's time to consider other options." "What kind of options?" Marcus cleared his throat. He was wearing his work clothes, must have come straight from the office. "Dad's getting older. This house is a lot to maintain. We're thinking it might be better for him and for everyone to sell the place. Use the money to set him up in a nice assisted living facility." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Dad's fine here." "Is he, though?" Jenna gestured around the room. "You're clearly overwhelmed, Maya. The dinner last night, that's just one example. This house is falling apart, and you can't keep up with everything." "The house isn't falling apart." "The gutters are sagging," Marcus said. "I noticed when I pulled up, and the paint on the porch is peeling." The gutters I'd been planning to fix next month. The paint I'd researched and priced out. "I'm handling it," I said. "We're not criticizing you." Jenna's voice had that careful tone, the one she used with difficult clients. "We're just saying it's too much for one person. If we sell, we can split the proceeds 3 ways, set Dad up somewhere nice with activities and medical staff on site, and you can get your own life back." Your own life back. As if I'd misplaced it somewhere carelessly. "What does Dad think about this?" I asked. "We haven't talked to him yet," Marcus admitted. "We wanted to get a sense of the numbers first, but I think once he understands how much equity is in this place, he'll see it makes sense." I thought about the deed in my nightstand, the one that listed me as co-owner, the one Mom had made sure to file 3 years ago, when she still had the strength to plan for contingencies. "Did Mom ever talk to you about the house ownership?" Jenna frowned. "What do you mean?" "Did she ever mention anything about the deed? About making changes?" "No. Why?" "Just wondering." I kept my voice level, unreactive. "When did you want to talk to Dad about this?" "Soon," Marcus said. "Maybe this weekend. We could all sit down together, look at some facilities, make it a family decision." "A family decision with the outcome already determined." I nodded slowly, as if I were considering it. "Let me know when you want to have that conversation." They left a few minutes later, satisfied they'd made progress. I stood in the living room after they'd gone, listening to the house settle around me. The creak of the floorboards upstairs, the tick of the radiator, the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. Then I went upstairs and pulled out the deed paperwork. Not just the deed, the full file I'd found in Mom's desk. The email chain with Bill Chen, her attorney. The notes about the transfer, the reasons for it. Mom's handwriting on a legal pad. House to Maya, 50%. She'll be the one to stay. She'll be the one who holds it together. I read through the lawyer's memo. The deed was ironclad. Filed with the county, notarized, fully legal. Mom's will specified that any decision about the house required my consent. Not unanimous family consent. My consent specifically. She'd made sure of that. I sat on my bed with the papers spread around me and realized something. My family had built an entire story where I was the supporting character. The helpful one, the available one, the one who'd step aside when real decisions needed to be made. They'd cast me in that role so thoroughly that they'd forgotten to check if I'd accepted the part. Jenna thought I was overwhelmed. Marcus thought I couldn't keep up. Dad thought I was just doing what daughters do, taking care of things out of obligation. None of them had asked what I'd sacrificed. The career opportunities I'd turned down because I couldn't relocate. The relationship that had ended because I didn't have time or energy left over. My savings, depleted. Month after month to cover bills no one else saw. My apartment, my independence, my separateness. I'd made myself small enough to fit into their narrative, and now they wanted to sell the house out from under me, split the money, and call it a family decision. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Bill Chen's office number. Mom had written it on the inside cover of the folder. Bill knows everything. He'll help if they try anything. They, not we. They. Mom had known. She'd seen this coming, even 3 years ago. She'd known that Jenna and Marcus would see me as temporary, manageable, movable. She'd known that Dad would go along with whatever seemed easiest. And she'd made sure I had the tools to protect myself. I dialed the number. A receptionist answered. Professional and brisk, I asked to schedule a consultation regarding property ownership and estate documentation. She offered me a slot on Friday afternoon. I took it. After I hung up, I sat there in the quiet house, thinking about that burnt lasagna pan, how I'd scrubbed at it for an hour trying to save something that was already ruined. How sometimes the best thing you can do is recognize what's not worth saving and throw it away. I went downstairs and started going through the house again, but this time I wasn't cataloging what I'd fixed. I was cataloging what I'd given up. The promotion I'd turned down because it required moving to Boston. The writing class I'd wanted to take that met on Tuesdays. The same night Dad needed his medication sorted. The weekend trip to the coast with college friends that I'd canceled because the furnace had died. All the ways I'd made myself available, flexible, accommodating. All the ways I'd become invisible. In the kitchen, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email chain with my supervisor. There was a message from 3 months ago offering me a chance to pitch for a larger client. I declined, said I had family obligations. She'd been understanding, said to let her know when my situation changed. I started typing a new email. Hi, Sarah. Is that opportunity still available? I'd like to throw my hat in the ring. I didn't send it yet. Just saved it in my drafts, let it sit there while I thought. Dad came home at 5:30, cheerful from his card game with Jerry. He'd won $12, which he showed me with genuine pride. I heated up leftover soup for dinner, simple, impossible to burn, and we ate while he told me about Jerry's grandson who was starting college in the spring. Jerry says I'm lucky to have you here, Dad said almost offhand. Says his daughter moved to Portland, hardly ever calls. He's right, I am lucky. I looked at him across the table, this man who'd raised me and loved me in his way, and tried to figure out when exactly I'd stopped being a person to him and started being a function. It wasn't malicious. He wasn't cruel. He just didn't see. He saw the clean house and the hot meals and the bills getting paid, and he didn't look deeper than that. Dad, I said, did Mom ever talk to you about the house deed? He looked confused. The deed? What about it? About changing the ownership, adding someone. I don't think so. Why? Just wondering. I picked up our bowls and carried them to the sink. Behind me, I heard Dad shuffle into the living room, turn on the television. The evening news, then Jeopardy, then whatever else he watched until he fell asleep in his chair. I went up to my room and pulled out the deed paperwork again, read through it one more time, made sure I understood every clause. Then I drafted an email to Bill Chen, outlining the situation, the proposed sale, my siblings' plans, my questions about my rights and options. I hit send before I could second guess it. The cursor blinked in my inbox, confirmation that the message had gone through. I closed my laptop and looked around my childhood bedroom at the rose wallpaper and the desk I'd done homework at, and the window that stuck halfway. I thought about Mom's note. She'll be the one to stay. She'll be the one who holds it together. But Mom hadn't said I had to hold it together on anyone's terms but my own. I picked up the burnt lasagna pan. I'd brought it upstairs earlier, meaning to soak it one more time. I looked at the scorched metal, the way the cheese had carbonized into something unrecognizable. Then I carried it downstairs and dropped it in the trash can on the back porch. Some things aren't worth saving. Some things you let burn, and then you move on. Bill Chen's office smelled like leather and old paper, the kind of smell that's supposed to communicate trustworthiness. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with reading glasses perched on his head and a coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Lawyer." Mom had always liked people who didn't take themselves too seriously. Your mother was very clear about her intentions, he said, sliding a copy of the deed across his desk. This is a fully executed co-ownership transfer. You own 50% of the property outright. The other 50% was held by your mother, and according to her will, it passes to your father with specific conditions. What conditions? Any sale or major decision regarding the property requires your written consent. He tapped the relevant paragraph. Your mother was concerned that after her death, there might be pressure to sell quickly. She wanted to make sure you had a say. She never told me. She was going to. I have emails from her dated 2 weeks before she passed, asking me to schedule a meeting with you. He pulled up something on his computer screen, turned it so I could see. Mom's email address, subject line, meeting with Maya, property. I felt something crack open in my chest. She tried. She'd planned to tell me, and then the cancer had moved faster than anyone expected. What are my options? I asked. Bill leaned back in his chair. Legally, you can't be forced to sell. If your siblings want to liquidate, they'd need your agreement. You could buy out your father's share if he's willing to sell to you specifically. You could maintain the current arrangement indefinitely. You could sell your share to them if you wanted out. He paused. But I'm guessing you're not here because you want out. I want them to see me. Excuse me? I want them to understand what I've been doing for the last 6 months, what I've been paying for. I want them to see me as something other than the family doormat who'll go along with whatever they decide. Bill's expression shifted into something more human, less attorney. Your mother mentioned you were the capable one, the one who showed up. She said that? Multiple times. She worried that your siblings would take that for granted. He closed his laptop. Here's what I'd recommend. I can draft a letter to your siblings and father outlining the legal situation. We can request a family meeting with me present to discuss options. It puts everything on formal ground, makes it clear this isn't just family drama. It's a legal matter with real consequences. When? I can have the letter ready by Monday. We could schedule a meeting for later in the week. I thought about Jenna and Marcus, about how they'd react when they got official legal correspondence. Part of me wanted to see their faces. Part of me just wanted it over with. Do it, I said. The letter arrived on Tuesday. I know because Jenna called me at 7 a.m, her voice pitched high with confusion and anger. Did you know about this? She demanded. No hello, no preamble. Know about what? The deed, the co-ownership. Did Mom tell you? I found the paperwork last month. And you didn't think to mention it? I was still in bed, hadn't even had coffee yet. You didn't think to mention you were planning to sell the house? That's different. We were going to discuss it as a family. Were you? Or were you going to tell me what you'd already decided? Silence on the other end. Then, we need to talk, all of us. There's a meeting scheduled with Mom's lawyer on Thursday. I know. I scheduled it. Another silence, longer this time. You should have said something, Maya. So should you. She hung up. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, waiting for guilt to arrive. It didn't. What came instead was a strange sense of clarity, like waking up in a room where someone's finally opened the curtains. Marcus called an hour later, more measured than Jenna, but clearly rattled. I got a letter from Bill Chen. Yeah? You're listed as co-owner on the house. Yeah? Since when? Since 3 years ago. Mom filed it right after her diagnosis came back. He exhaled slowly. And you found out when? Last month. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ask if there was anything you should know before planning to sell? I was making coffee now, phone wedged between my shoulder and ear. You assumed, Marcus. You both assumed I'd just go along with whatever you decided. That's not fair, isn't it? I poured water into the coffee maker, watched it drip. When's the last time either of you asked how I was managing things? When's the last time you wondered how I was paying for everything? You never said you needed help. I shouldn't have to say it. You should have asked. Another pause. Then, I'll see you Thursday. He hung up too. I drank my coffee standing at the kitchen window, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder I'd installed in the spring. Mom used to love cardinals, said they were good luck. Dad came down around 8, moving slowly. He'd gotten the letter too. Bill had hand-delivered it the day before, made sure Dad understood what it said. We hadn't talked about it yet. I'd been letting him process, but now he stood in the doorway looking uncertain. You want breakfast? I asked. Maya. Scrambled or fried? I don't understand why your mother didn't tell me. I cracked eggs into a bowl, added milk. Maybe she thought she had more time, or maybe she thought you'd tell Jenna and Marcus, and she wanted to tell me first. She should have discussed it with me. Should she have? I looked at him. Would you have agreed? Would you have thought it was necessary? He didn't answer. I scrambled the eggs, made toast, set his plate down in front of him. He ate slowly, not meeting my eyes. I didn't know you were paying for everything, he said finally. I know. You should have told me. Would you have believed me if Jenna said I was exaggerating? He set down his fork. That silence told me everything I needed to know. He would have checked with Jenna, deferred to her confidence, assumed I was being dramatic. Because that's the story they'd all agreed on. Maya's capable, Maya'll handle it. But Maya's also too emotional, too sensitive, doesn't quite see things clearly. The meeting's Thursday at 2, I said. Bill Chen's office. I know. You don't have to take sides, Dad. You just have to listen. He nodded, but I could see him folding inward, retreating to the place where he didn't have to make hard decisions. Mom had always been the one to handle conflict. Without her, he just wanted everyone to get along, even if getting along meant some people got erased. Thursday came with rain, the kind that turns the whole city gray. I dressed carefully, not too formal, but not casual either. I wanted to look like someone who'd made deliberate choices, not someone who'd stumbled into a situation she couldn't handle. Bill's office had a conference room with a long table and too many chairs. Jenna arrived first, wearing her work clothes and an expression I couldn't quite read. Marcus came with his wife, Sarah, which surprised me. She gave me a small smile that might have been sympathetic. Dad was last, looking older than usual in his good jacket. Bill started with the facts. The deed transfer, the timeline, the legal, language in Mom's will. He used the kind of calm, professional tone that made it clear this wasn't up for debate. These were simply the parameters we were working within. So, Maya owns half the house, Marcus said, and Dad owns the other half. Correct. And per the terms of the will, any decision about the property requires Maya's written consent. Jenna's jaw tightened. Mom never mentioned this to any of us. She mentioned it to her attorney, Bill said mildly, which is the legally relevant party. Can we contest it? Jenna asked. On what grounds? Your mother was of sound mind when she filed the deed transfer. It was notarized, witnessed, and properly recorded with the county. There's no ambiguity in her will. You're welcome to hire your own attorney to review everything, but I'll tell you now, you won't find a loophole. I watched Jenna absorb this, saw the moment she shifted from looking for an exit to calculating her next move. She was good at that, adapting to new information, finding the angle that worked in her favor. Okay, she said. So we can't sell without Maya's agreement. What does Maya want? All eyes turned to me. I'd prepared for this, rehearsed it in my head a dozen times. But sitting there with my family staring at me, I felt the old instinct to smooth things over, to make it easy for everyone else. I pushed past it. I want you to understand what the last 6 months have been, I said. I pulled out the folder I'd brought, copies of every receipt, every bill, every payment. I slid them across the table. Property taxes, $3,000. Furnace replacement, $4,200. Medical bills, $6,000. Utilities, repairs, maintenance, another $8,000. That's $23,000 I've paid out of pocket since Mom died. Marcus picked up one of the receipts, frowned at it. You never asked. I kept my voice level. You assumed Dad was handling it? Or that it was just taking care of itself. But houses don't take care of themselves. Someone has to pay the bills, fix the problems, keep things running. We would have helped if you'd said something, Jenna said. Would you? Or would you have said Dad should sell the house because it's too much trouble? She didn't answer. Sarah was reading through the receipts now, her expression growing more uncomfortable with each page. I'm not trying to punish anyone, I continued. I'm not keeping score. But you need to understand that I wasn't just living here rent-free, being useless in the kitchen. I was holding everything together, and you didn't see it because I made it look easy. So what do you want? Marcus asked again. Reimbursement? I want acknowledgement, and I want to buy out your shares of the house. Jenna's eyebrows shot up. Buy us out? At fair market value, minus what I've already paid in. Bill has the numbers. I nodded to the attorney, who slid a new document across the table. The house is worth about $450. Your combined shares would be 25% each of Dad's 50%. That's about $112,000 total. Minus the $23,000 I've paid in expenses, I'm offering $89,000. Split between the two of you, that's $44,000 each. I watched them process this. They'd expected me to be broke, unable to do anything but accept their plans. I'd let them think that because it was easier than explaining. How do you have that kind of money? Jenna asked. I've been freelancing on the side, taking extra projects, building up savings. I gave up my apartment, but I didn't give up working. I paused. I've also been in contact with my supervisor about a promotion. It comes with a significant raise. If I stay here, work from home full time, I can afford the house and still save. Marcus exchanged a glance with Sarah. And Dad? Dad can stay as long as he wants. I'd ask him to contribute to utilities and groceries. We can work out a fair amount, but he wouldn't have to move, wouldn't have to leave his home. I looked at Dad, who was staring at the table. Unless you want to sell, I said quietly. If you really want to move to assisted living, we can talk about that. But it should be your choice, not something we're forcing on you because it's convenient. I don't want to leave, Dad said. His voice was rough. I just thought everyone seemed to think it was too much for you. It was too much, I said, but not because of the house, because I was doing it alone. The rain picked up outside, drumming against the windows. Bill Chen sat quietly, letting us work through it. He was good at this, knowing when to step in and when to let families figure themselves out. I need to think about it, Jenna said finally. $44,000 is less than I'd get if we sold the whole house. True, I said, but this way you get cash now, no realtor fees, no waiting for the market, and Dad gets to stay home. What about when he needs more care? Marcus asked. What if he gets to a point where living at home isn't safe? Then we'll figure it out together, as a family. But we don't make that decision preemptively because it's easier to plan. I looked at each of them. I'm not saying I'll do this alone forever. I'm saying I've been doing it alone for 6 months, and if we're going to be a family, that needs to change. Sarah spoke up for the first time. I think it's fair. She looked at Marcus. More than fair, considering everything Maya's paid. Jenna was still scanning the numbers, her expression unreadable. And if we say no? Then nothing changes, Bill said. The current ownership structure remains. Maya continues as co-owner, your father remains as co-owner, and any future decisions require both their consent. So we'd get nothing. Eventually you'd inherit your father's share per the will, Bill said, but that could be years. Decades, hopefully. I watched Jenna calculate, saw the moment she realized she didn't have leverage here. She could push back, dig in her heels, but the law was clear. I owned half the house. She owned nothing. I want to talk to Marcus alone, she said. Bill showed them to another room. Sarah stayed with us looking apologetic. I didn't know about the expenses, she said to me. Marcus never mentioned anything. He didn't know. Still, she hesitated. For what it's worth, I think you've been incredibly patient. Dad hadn't spoken since admitting he didn't want to move. He sat there picking at a thread on his jacket, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I'm sorry, he said finally. For what? For not seeing. For not asking. He looked up at me and his eyes were wet. Your mother would be ashamed of me. Mom would want you to do better now, I said. Not to beat yourself up about what you didn't see before. I should have believed you about everything. I should have trusted you to know what you needed. It wasn't enough, not really, but it was something. A beginning, maybe. Jenna and Marcus came back after 20 minutes. Jenna's expression had shifted, still not happy, but resigned. We'll accept the buyout, she said, but we want it in writing that if Dad needs care beyond what you can provide, we revisit the living situation. Done, I said. We can put that in the agreement. Bill made notes, looking satisfied. I'll draft the paperwork. You'll all need to sign, including your father consenting to the partial sale of his interest. We should be able to finalize everything within 2 weeks. And then what? Jenna asked. We just pretend everything's fine? No, I said. We acknowledge it wasn't fine, and we figure out how to be better. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded. Marcus looked relieved, probably just glad the meeting was over. Dad sat quietly, still picking at that thread. We left separately, no group huddle in the parking lot, no plans to get coffee and debrief, just awkward goodbyes and the promise to be in touch about paperwork. I drove Dad home in silence, rain streaming down the windshield. Did I ruin everything? He asked as we pulled into the driveway. No, Dad, you didn't ruin anything. Feels like I did. I turned off the car and looked at him. You let things happen that shouldn't have happened. You didn't see things you should have seen, but you didn't ruin anything. You can still fix it. How? By seeing me now, by actually being here. He nodded slowly, and I thought maybe he understood. Maybe. The paperwork took 3 weeks, not 2. Lawyers are optimistic that way. But by mid-November, everything was finalized. Marcus and Jenna's signatures on the buyout agreement, the transfer of their interests in Dad's share to me, the updated deed filed with the county. I owned 75% of the house now. Dad owned 25. We'd worked out an agreement. He'd pay me $400 a month to cover utilities and groceries, and he'd take over his own laundry and basic cleaning. I can do more, he'd said when we discussed it. Start with that, I told him. The promotion came through the week after the buyout closed. My supervisor had been thrilled with the pitch I'd put together for the new client, and it had turned into a 6-month contract that would bring in more revenue than I'd made all last year. She'd offered me team lead, a 30% raise, and the flexibility to work remotely as long as I met deadlines. I'd converted Mom's old sewing room into my office, bought a proper desk, a good chair, set up dual monitors. The window looked out over the garden, and sometimes during video calls, clients would comment on the view, call it charming. I didn't tell them it was my childhood home. I just smiled and said thank you. Dad had started keeping his own schedule, writing down his appointments and medications in a notebook I'd bought him. He'd asked me to show him how to do laundry, actually asked, not just waited for me to do it. We'd spent an awkward hour in the basement while I explained sorting and water temperature and which detergent to use for what. He'd taken notes like he was studying for an exam. I should have learned this 40 years ago, he'd said. Better late than never. The second time he did laundry, he washed a red towel with his white shirts and turned everything pink. I'd come downstairs to find him staring at the washing machine like it had personally betrayed him. I forgot to check the colors, he said. Happens to everyone once. I helped him run everything through again with color remover, showed him how to double-check the load before starting the machine. He didn't complain, didn't act helpless. He just listened and tried again. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. Jenna had texted once, a week after the buyout closed, "I'm sorry I didn't see it." Just that, nothing else. I'd stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide how to respond. In the end, I just sent back, "Thanks." Not enough for full reconciliation, but I wasn't ready for that yet. Maybe I wouldn't ever be. That was okay too. Marcus had been more practical. He'd sent a card, actual mail, not a text, with a handwritten note inside. "Let us know if you need anything with the house. I mean it." His wife Sarah had added a postscript, "Proud of you." I'd put the card on my desk where I could see it when I worked. By December, we'd settled into a new rhythm. Dad and I had dinner together most nights, but sometimes he'd go to Jerry's, and sometimes I'd eat at my desk while working late. I'd hired a cleaning service to come twice a month, not because I couldn't do it, but because I was done making myself do everything alone. Dad had initially protested the cost, then quietly offered to split it with me. We'd compromised. He'd handle the tidying, they'd handle the deep cleaning. The garden out front had gone dormant for winter, but I'd planted bulbs in October, tulips and daffodils that would come up in spring, Mom's favorites. I'd bought a new bird feeder, too, a nicer one than the cheap plastic thing I'd put up in March. Cardinals came every morning now, bright red against the gray winter sky. One evening in late December, Dad knocked on my office door. I was in the middle of a video call, so I muted my mic and waved him in. He hesitated in the doorway, then held up Mom's old cookbook. "Can you teach me to make lasagna?" he mouthed. I smiled, held up 5 fingers, 5 minutes. He nodded and disappeared. The meeting ran long, they always did, but eventually I wrapped it up and found Dad in the kitchen, the cookbook open on the counter, ingredients already laid out. He'd gone to the store without telling me, bought everything on the recipe list. "I've never made this," he admitted. "Your mother always did it." "That's okay. It's not that hard." It was, actually. Lasagna's tricky, layers that need to be just right, timing that has to be precise, cheese that burns if you're not careful. But we worked through it together, step by step. I showed him how to season the meat, how to layer the noodles so they didn't overlap, how to judge when the top was golden instead of burnt. He took notes in the cookbook margins, his handwriting shaky but determined. When we slid the pan into the oven, he set a timer on his phone and then another on the kitchen clock, like he didn't quite trust himself not to forget. "Why now?" I asked while we cleaned up. "Why decide to learn this now?" He was quiet for a moment, scrubbing the pot we'd use for the sauce. Because you shouldn't have to do everything, and because I want to know how, in case you're not here. I'm not going anywhere, Dad. But you could, and you should be able to. You shouldn't have to stay because I can't take care of myself. The timer went off. We'd set it for 5 minutes before the recipe suggested just to check. I pulled the lasagna out and the top was perfect. Golden brown, cheese bubbling at the edges, not a hint of burning. We did it, Dad said, sounding genuinely surprised. We did. We let it cool while we made a salad. Another thing I taught him. How to tear lettuce instead of cutting it. How to make a simple vinaigrette. When we finally sat down to eat, the lasagna was perfect. Not just edible, not just acceptable. Actually good. Your mother would be proud, Dad said. And this time I knew he meant it. Not proud of the cooking specifically. Mom had never been precious about recipes. Proud that we were here, figuring it out, doing the work of being family in a way that didn't require anyone to disappear. February brought a cold snap, the kind where your breath crystallizes the moment you step outside. I was on the front porch, bundled in Mom's old winter coat, replacing the light bulb that had burned out the week before. The fixture had been acting up for months, flickering, dimming, finally giving out completely. I'd ordered a new bulb online, the right wattage and everything. I'd just gotten the old bulb out when the front door opened behind me. Dad stood there in his coat, toolbox in hand. Need help? He asked. I almost said no. The automatic response, the one I'd learned over 6 months of doing everything myself. But I looked at him, really looked, and saw someone trying, someone showing up. Yeah, I said. Can you hold the ladder? He did. And while I screwed in the new bulb, we talked about nothing important. The weather, Jerry's upcoming birthday party, the hardware store that was closing downtown. Normal conversation, family conversation, the kind where nobody's keeping score or waiting for someone to fail. The bulb clicked into place and I flicked the switch. Warm light spilled across the porch, steady and bright. No flickering, no dimming, just solid, reliable light. That's better, Dad said. Yeah. We stood there for a moment looking at the garden I'd planted. The bulbs were still dormant under the frozen ground, but in a few weeks they'd start pushing up. Green shoots first, then the flowers. Tulips and daffodils, bright spots of color against the gray. A new neighbor, young couple, moved in around Christmas, walked past with their dog. They waved, called out a hello. The woman asked if this was our house, said she'd been admiring the garden all winter, couldn't wait to see what came up in spring. It's hers, Dad said, nodding at me. She did all the planting. Not ours, not the family's, hers. The neighbor smiled. It's going to be beautiful. Thanks, I said. They moved on, dog pulling them down the sidewalk. Dad and I went back inside, tracking cold air with us. I hung Mom's coat on the hook by the door. I'd claimed it fully now, wore it instead of my own newer one. It smelled like her perfume still faintly, under the wool in winter. Dad made coffee while I answered emails at the kitchen table. He brought me a cup without being asked, remembered the way I liked it. 2 sugars, splash of milk. Small thing, easy to overlook, but I noticed. Your mother knew, he said suddenly. I looked up. Knew what? That you'd be the one to keep this place standing. That's why she put your name on the deed. Not because Jenna and Marcus didn't love her, but because you're the one who stays. He stirred his coffee, not looking at me. She told me once, toward the end. Said you were stronger than you looked. Said you'd hold us all together if we let you. She said that? I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I thought she was just being sentimental. He finally met my eyes. I understand now. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded. Outside, the porch light glowed steady and bright, pushing back against the winter dark. Inside, the house was warm, the radiators ticking softly. My house, more or less. My responsibility, but also my choice. Not a burden I'd been trapped under. A place I'd chosen to protect. The difference mattered. I thought about that burnt lasagna pan, about Jenna's voice saying useless, about the way I'd scrubbed and scrubbed, trying to save something that was already ruined. How sometimes the best thing you can do is throw it away and start over. How sometimes burning something down is the only way to see what's actually worth keeping. I'd let their story of me burn. The supporting character, the helpful one, the daughter who'd step aside when real decisions needed making. I'd let it burn and walked away from the ashes. What remained was simpler, clearer. I was Maya Reyes. I owned this house. I'd sacrificed for it, paid for it, held it together. And now I was seen. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Dad finished his coffee and rinsed his cup. Another small thing, learned behavior. He was trying. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Try, fail, try again. Show up even when it was uncomfortable. Hold the ladder when someone needed it. "I'm making pot roast tomorrow," he said. "From Mom's cookbook. You want to help?" "Sure," I said. He headed upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen. I looked around at the room I'd cleaned so many times, the stove where I'd burned that dinner, the table where we'd eaten 1,000 meals. The house settled around me, all its familiar creaks and sighs. My house. My home. Outside, a cardinal landed on the bird feeder, bright red against white snow, exactly the way Mom used to love. I watched it for a moment, then returned to my laptop, to my work, to the life I was building on my own terms. The porch light glowed steady behind me. I'd fixed the wiring myself last week, traced the problem to a loose connection in the fixture. Simple repair, really. Just a matter of knowing where to look, having the right tools, and not being afraid to get your hands dirty. Some things you save, some things you let burn. The trick is knowing which is which.